Hi, my name is Joe Hale, and I serve as the founder and president of Nick's Oasis. It's really great to meet you. I really hope I get a chance to meet each one of you in person at some point. But for now, this will have to do. You know the world we're living in, and we're just going to make the best of it. As the president of the organization, here at the home office, I'm known as the one with the messiest desk. And I'm not bragging about that, but the reality is this desk kind of represents my job. This is a proposal for the school in China. This is a proposal for the new buildings, potentially for the school in Japan. A lot of different things that I'm working on are represented by this mess. Hopefully by the time they become reality, they won't be such a mess. But I serve as the representative to the board for the activities of the organization, and I also serve representing the board to the staff of the organization. And so I work very closely with the executive team, which is composed of our CFO, Dennis Luger, and our Vice President for School Operations, Dr. Dwayne Joe, and our Vice President for Mobilization, Mr. Jed Hale. And we work very, very closely together in overseeing the overall ministry of Nick's Oasis. So one of the things I also do, because we don't have a new projects manager right now, I also look into all the new projects. So I want to take you across the room to show you my map. I use it almost every day. And when I get an inquiry from a country somewhere, either from an existing school that's considering joining the network, or from a group of people who really want to have an international Christian school in their location, I go up to that map and I can kind of see what's already existing in the country and learn about the country as much as I can as I begin to do my research and investigation into new projects. So I'm going to take you over here and just give you a glimpse of this map. What we have is somewhat of a hybrid between the international school and the traditional mission school that's typically just for Christians or just for missionary kids. And what we do is we have a model that is becoming really quite popular worldwide, where we have a Christian school that's open to the general public. And by placing Christian teachers into those classrooms, we feel that we have an opportunity not only to minister to missionary kids and professional people's kids and Christian families' kids, but also we welcome into our schools the unsaved, the kids from all different religions, and in the most loving way that we possibly can have an opportunity in that classroom to present Jesus Christ. And so I want to welcome you to this family. I see Nick's as a family. We're not all the same, but as a family, we are joining our hands together to say that what we can do together, we can do more dynamically and more powerfully than we can do separate. And so thank you for joining hands with us. And I'm going to spend today introducing you to the heart of our mission. Every agency is unique. Every agency has its own priorities and certain things about it that is helpful to understand what kind of family you're becoming a part of. And so I want to take opportunity to present what we call the heart of the mission. And I want you to know that the heart of the mission is about people. We are people reaching people for the cause of Christ. No matter where they come from, no matter what their background, the heart of what we're doing is so that we can influence and impact young people for the cause of Christ. And we want to do that in a very sensitive way. We don't want to be offensive in the way that we present that, and yet we want to make sure that this is very much a part of who we are and what we do. So I just want to say from the get-go that this session is a little bit of a hodgepodge. It's bits and pieces of all different things that make up our family DNA. And I want you to be familiar with those things so you can know how to really flourish within the environment of Nick's Oasis. So welcome to the family. One of the many things that I have as a collection over the many years I've been in international ministry is my hat collection. And so when you come and visit me in my office, I want you to make sure you get a chance to see that hat collection. And I want to talk to you about hats that you wear. And this one's from Afghanistan, by the way. We used to have a school in Kabul, Afghanistan for about 10 years, which we had to close. But sometimes I also am called a man of many hats. And I know you have that role too. I want to talk to you about a couple of those hats that you might be called on to wear in serving with this organization. We are a missions agency. We are unashamedly a missions agency. But I know, depending on what your background might be, I know that a lot of people are really scared of that word. When you think of a missionary, you almost have this idea of someone that levitates when they come into your presence, or someone that has a glow about them, or someone that's superhuman, or somehow beyond the realm of how you see yourself. But the truth is that image is not a correct one. None of the missionaries in the Bible and none of the missionaries of modern times would claim any of those things. The reality is missionaries are just people just like you and me that have faults and that have shortcomings, that put their pants on the same way you put yours on, and they have sins, they have things about their personalities that sometimes make it difficult to work with others. Missionaries are really just people like you and just like me. And so I hope that you will really try to get over the negative feelings about being referred to as a missionary. I also think that in our settings and when you are in your workplace, it's not necessarily a good thing to call yourself, I'm here as a missionary, or even to refer to yourself in that way. Because the truth is we are all servants of the Lord. There's a lot of different ways that missionaries are defined. And I've seen some churches that take the approach that, every member is a missionary. And the truth is there is an aspect of the gospel that's given to all Christians, that we are to go into the world and preach the gospel to all nations. In one aspect, yes, we are all missionaries. But the truth is, when everyone's a missionary, there is also the reality that no one is really a missionary. So what is it that makes up a missionary? There are others that define missionary fitting such great detail in description that you can say, well, I have a missionary heart, but that doesn't describe me. One of those things is traditionally, the thought that all missionaries have to raise 100% of their support. Well, that's more tradition than it is Bible, because I can't find anything in the Bible that really says that a missionary is determined by the source of their income. That's not really a biblical concept either. So what is it that we are as a mission agency that we want you to cling to and to really claim as your own identity? I think the most important thing is that you have a heart that is a heart for missions. Now, if we say everyone is a missionary, then really no one's a missionary. I've heard people say you're either a missionary or a mission field. And I think that's a little confusing too. But the reality is, if the word missionary is going to have a real meaning for us, maybe we just need to define what that word means for us. And I would like to just talk with you for a few minutes along that line. First of all, a missionary is someone that crosses some kind of a boundary to serve the Lord, to share the good news of the gospel with people who have differences of some sort. Sometimes that's a linguistic line or boundary. Sometimes that's a cultural line or boundary. And sometimes it's a mixture of all of those things. Sometimes you might be still ministering in English, but doing it in a place like Nigeria, where the language is the same, but the culture is very, very different. And even in our situation, we have a lot of what we call third culture kids, which will be a part of your training, where you might be an American serving in a place like Japan, serving a student who comes from Afghanistan. I mean, we're a weird kind of a hybrid of a lot of things. The important thing for me is not that you give yourself the title missionary, but I do want you to know that a missionary is one that is sent out. And I want to encourage every one of you to have a group of people that you can define as your senders. These are people that pray for you. These are people that keep up with you. And these are people that you are allowing, you are giving them the opportunity through their prayers and support of you to serve overseas when they may not be able to do that themselves. And so in that perspective, you are the sent one from this group of people, no matter if it's one church or many churches or a bunch of individuals. You are the one that they are sending and praying for to cross that culture or linguistic barrier or both to serve the Lord somewhere else. And so don't see that as a negative thing. See that as a positive thing. If people want to support you financially to do that ministry, don't rob them of that blessing. Also, I think it's very important that you see yourself as someone who is crossing cultural and linguistic boundaries so that you can carry the gospel to other nations. If we just do this because we're intrigued with culture, or because we like to travel the world, and we love to see other places and other countries, and that is the summary of why we're doing what we're doing, I would say this is not the right organization for you. We want you to do your job. We want you to do it professionally. We want you to do it as well as anybody does education. And yet at the end of the day, you do it as a servant of Jesus Christ so that you can represent the truth of the gospel. Now, we don't take big Bibles into our classroom and bang it over the heads of kids. We don't present ourselves or our faith that way. At the same time, though, by living the gospel in another place, salt and light just really has its effect no matter where you are. And it will also lead to opportunities when you can actually share in words what it means to you to have a relationship with the Lord. And you pray for those opportunities, and you sensitively look for times and places when you can do that. So traditionally, a lot of people feel like, if you're a missionary, they should be giving you money. Here's what I would suggest that you do. For every person that joins our organization, no matter if you call yourself a missionary or you call yourself a teacher or you call yourself a missionary teacher, whatever it is that you want to have as your approach to ministry, I pray that you will emphasize that part, the ministry part of what you're doing. We want missions-minded, ministry-oriented, people-loving staff members who will take the gospel to the nations. That's really what we're all about. So we have it set up so you have to kind of manage those folks who are your prayer group. I would suggest that you have a regular newsletter and you tell some of the stories about some of your kids and share pictures about what you're doing and show your supporters, whether they're just praying for you or whether they're praying and giving, or whether they're giving to you, that you show them what you are doing in ministry, because in many, many ways you are their extension overseas. And also for every one of our staff members, we have an account set up so that people that want to help you financially have an avenue to do that, so that they can give a tax-exempt gift through the organization that will go directly to support you and to help you. Many agencies charge 15 to 18% for that service. We charge 8% to cover the cost of that service. So that's deducted, but the rest of it all goes to you. And I would just encourage you to be a good steward of what gives you in that support area. We do have some of our schools where more support is required. We have some schools where no support is required, but it is still an option for everyone. If you have people that want to support you financially, don't rob them of the blessing of doing that. Just say, if I get $500 a month in missionary support, then I'm going to put that into a special account wherever I am and ask God to show me how to invest that money in His kingdom work, even if you don't need it for your own income. And so I would just encourage you to go ahead and do that and give people the option to pray for you, give people the option to support you financially. And we have our system set up here to be able to enable you to do that. So whether you call yourself a missionary or whether you just are a missionary, it doesn't really matter. But what really does matter is that you have the heart of a missionary, a heart of someone that is choosing to serve cross-culturally so that the gospel of Jesus Christ can be spread to all the earth.
I want to talk just for a few minutes about what it means to be a part of an organization. And sometimes I hear questions like, let's call Nix and see what they have to say, or we need to bring Nix into this, and my question is always, who is Nix? Nix is not exactly buildings. Nix is not exactly the people who inhabit or work at those buildings. Nix is an organization. So I always say, if you want to know who Nix is, then look in the mirror. And so that's what I am doing right now. And I just want to talk to you about what it means to be a part of a family. Yes, we are a corporation, we are a company. At the same time, we are a family. And Nix is not a headquarters. Nix is a network. Nix is a network of schools. Nix is a network of people. And so I happen to be standing right now at this board, which shows all of our teams that are all over the world. Right now we have approximately 800 teachers and staff members that serve on these teams all around the world. You can see that some of these are Oasis teams and some of them are Nix teams. And we even have one school in Korea that's a hybrid school. It's Nix and Oasis. And so it's very important for you to understand who Nix is. And Nix is really you and me. And we are working together in such a way that hand in hand we can be more effective than operating separately. So as I welcome you to this Nix family and introduce you to the heart of this family, I want you to know that teamwork is a critical part of what we do. We have such a variety of schools, everything from a school in Seoul, Korea that has 1,000 students to a small school in Japan just across the way with 80 students. And so those two schools are very, very different, but they're all part of the Nix family.
The Nix family is not about school size. The Nix family is not about the language of the host country. The Nix family is about joining hands in ministry. And so how does that look from your perspective? Typically, when people come to Impact, they feel the bigness of the organization. And because you make friends who are from all different countries, and that's one of the negative things about not being able to do it in person. But once you get to the field in a very real way, Nix or Oasis, whichever field you're going to, really becomes about the team that you're a part of. And it seems like headquarters is far, far away. But it can't be in spirit, and it can't be in your heart. We want you to realize that you are a part of a family, but in a very real way, that family becomes much more focused once you arrive on the field. So I would like to kind of introduce to you our field structure, how that operates, because sometimes you may feel like what you see at your school is not exactly how you saw things when you were seeing the biggest picture, which is presented at Impact. And so I want to talk for just a few minutes about the field structure. I would encourage you to reference your missions manual that you signed and had your pastor or someone who is a reference for you to sign along with you that you've read it. I also know that you didn't memorize it, and very likely you can't remember all the contents of it, but it is very important that you realize that we do have a structure, and we have certain things that are unique to our organization. We're not trying to tell you that those things are holy. We're not trying to tell you that everything that we do is biblical. What we are trying to tell you is that in order for us to be effective as a family ministering together, that we have to operate with some things that are consistent and some guidelines and parameters that we work within so that we can be effective in ministry. So some of the things I'll be sharing with you as we continue this talk are related to that. Now, every one of our field operation groups has a structure on the field that we call the field leadership team. Many years ago, we used to just have a structure where primarily the field leader was our one and only contact for the home office. We changed that structure because we know that it is possible that a field leader can go astray, and that it's possible that a field leader can operate in such a way that might be effective in some other organization, but it's not exactly what we desire for our organization. We really want accountability on the field, not just through the home office. And so to bring accountability to the field, we have formed what we call the field leadership team. And the director of each school is basically the chair or the person leading that field leadership team. But the accountability between the home office function of the network and the local school function of the network is that that field leadership team as a group will be the one that is accountable to what's happening out in that school. So we have some accountability systems built into their function and to their role. At the same time, we know that leadership is very important, and we don't want to in any way disempower the leaders that God has sent our way. We have enough sameness in all of our schools that we can function together with one heart as an agency. We have enough differences in our schools also that the field leadership team that's in place at every one of the schools can have its own form of a bit of independence to decide what is best for that particular individual school. And so that field leadership team is to hold the feet to the fire, so to speak, for all of the development of the school. So yes, we do have a leader on the field. That leader has an accountability group with the field leadership team. And then we even have a larger group called the Field Leadership Team Plus. And that normally includes the member care people, the pastoral people, and other people that are speaking into the overall life of the school. So we feel like having a group of people who are accountable as a group is a healthier system than just one person being accountable. That's also true of all of the reporting that's sent to the home office. The field leadership team has access to all of those reports, so they know exactly what's being sent here to the home office. We also have some ways that accountability can be built in so that even as a NICS staffer or OASIS staffer, that you have the opportunity to express to the agency ways that you feel like things that need to be addressed in your local setting that aren't. We don't want to wait until it's your leaving interview or your departure interview until we hear from you if there's some real issues that need to be dealt with. So we do that through several different ways. One of the ways is we have an evaluation system of our directors that includes the field leadership team, input from the parents. It's kind of a 360 review of our directors and leaders in our schools. And you will have the opportunity to give input to those directors. And we just want to encourage all of you to do that in such a way that there won't be a surprise when you write something out on an evaluation, that you, if you have an issue, that you will go directly to the person involved and that you will resolve those issues as best you can. And then we also have built into our manuals what we call a grievance policy, that if you go and try to see those matters dealt with in the right way and you don't feel a satisfactory answer has taken place or that those issues have been satisfactorily addressed, you can also go through that process as well. And so I want you to encourage you to use those systems. That's why they're there, and we really want to hear from you. We also have something we will ask you to fill out annually. It's called the Annual Ministry Review, and we do that around somewhere around the 1st of May every year, where we will ask you, how is your experience as a NICS staffer? How is that going? And there's only 13 questions on the whole thing. And we really desire your input along the way. If you have something that's bothering you, don't wait until you leave to tell us. Share with us those things along the way so they can be properly addressed with. Every one of those, we call it the AMR, the Annual Ministry Review. Every one of those questions are reviewed. They're put together in the form of a recommendation to the field leadership team that the scores in this particular area for your school are really quite low. And here's some recommendations we'd like to make to the FLT to help you address those issues. So what I'm saying is, just like anybody else, we have conflict, we have different leadership styles, we have different ways of doing things. We have some leaders that are extremely collaborative in their style. We have others that are not quite as collaborative as some others. And we know that you're an individual and that you're probably not going to work in a perfect place where your preferences are a perfect match for everyone in your life at all levels. It just rarely happens. But what we are saying is that your experience is really important to us. So annually, we'll be asking you about your overall ministry experience and ask you to be honest in that. Back to the evaluations, I would like to just kind of tell you how we do that. We do not want people to take an opportunity to write something that's hurtful to the administrators. So what we do is we conduct the interviews from the home office for the director of each school. And those scores are put together with all the comments, and we know your name will be on that submission to the home office. These names are not accessible to the directors, but we summarize what folks are saying, including the comments, and we send those to the directors without names on them. So just be careful that you don't say every time my director comes through my third grade class, he's really disruptive to his school in there. That's not very helpful, and it identifies who you are, and that's what we're trying to avoid. We want an honest answer about how our directors and our leaders are doing as they lead you. We want them to do that well, and we want them to do that collaboratively rather than as an individual. And so that's the system that we have set up for our teams. And I want to just encourage you, when you have any issues, and they probably will come, conflicts and issues are very common, that you use the system that we've created for you to be able to communicate those things. I want to share with you now a little bit about a few of the programs that we have within the organization that you can be familiar with. The first one, I kind of referred to it a little bit earlier, that we're trying to do things that will incentivize you to stay with us a long time. And our directors are very creative, and we realized that we were, because most of our staff, when they go overseas, they don't, from the US anyway, they don't pay into Social Security, that a lot of folks were needing to come back to add a few more years of experience in the States where they were paying into Social Security to be able to get adequate benefits from that program. And so they asked the question, can we do better than Social Security? Since Social Security is not really that successful, couldn't we offer something that would give our people the option to stay on the field rather than to return? And so we had lots of hours of discussion about that. The result is that after consulting with legal folks and different input from different folks about how this could be done, we ended up setting up what we call the CARE Foundation. And this foundation is specifically put together to be able to help people when they reach retirement years after working in Nick schools to be able to have supplemental income at that point in life. So the basics of it are, of course it breaks down into lots and lots of legal details, but basically when you reach age 65 and you have given the organization 20 years of service overseas or including furloughs, that all of your time with us you would have been attaining points that accumulate into the total amount of points that you would have used while or earned while serving with the organization. Then the schools are contributing to this fund. The schools each give 1.5% of their income as income into this fund. And this foundation then, for 10 years we didn't issue any funds from there and let it accumulate. And now those funds have accumulated to a point that we can just distribute the interest from that fund, and it will go out to everyone who's eligible. So whether you're still working or whether you're retired, when you're 65, if you spent 20 years with the organization, depending on the number of points that you have gained, you'll be able to get supplementary income during your the time that you're 65 years old and up through the organization. So we have folks that may have served with us for 10 years. Then you can start to consider, wow, I'm halfway there really to being eligible. And then, when you hit 12 years or 15 years, you begin to realize that, why would I really do anything else? And what we really are hopeful in putting this program together is we're hopeful that it would at least encourage our people to make working with NICS a career. And to us, that's the best kind of recruiting that we can do, when we can have a great teacher that stays for their whole career. We realize not everybody fits that category, but we hope and pray that that'll be a way that this organization can bless you for serving overseas. And so I want to just make you aware of that program, and we can give you more details as it comes time to share those. A second program that I want to share with you about is what we call the Macedonia Fellowship. And this is just based after the biblical example of the Macedonian church. It says the Macedonian church first gave of themselves, and then from their poverty they gave to others. The Macedonia church was known as a church that gave. And so we created a staff giving program just for you that would encourage you to give. We don't really emphasize the size of the gift. We realize that many of our teachers could be making a lot more money somewhere else. We really know that. In some of our schools, even that have to raise support, we realize that most jobs don't require you to raise your own salary. But in some cases, raising supplemental support or additional support to your stipend or your salary might be necessary, even though in most of our schools it's not required at this point. The idea is to give out of your poverty. If you're in poverty, to be able to give. And the whole point is participation more than it is the size of the gift. And so each one of you will have the option at your school to have a small amount deducted from your salary every month that goes into what we call the Macedonia Fellowship. And that's the idea. We would really make it our goal to have 100% participation. And this is a way, no matter where you're assigned within the network, that you can support the work of the network from a broader perspective. And careful consideration is given to where those funds go. They usually go to new projects or to an existing school that has a new project going on and needs financial help to get that going. But here's the way it works. That Macedonia Fellowship Fund gets dumped into what we call the Seed Fund, and that's the third program that I want to share with you. We're a unique missions agency in that all undesignated gifts that come to the agency really doesn't go into our operations. All the undesignated funds that come into our operation go into what we call the Seed Fund. The Macedonia Fellowship also gets put into the Seed Fund. The Seed Fund then is used, and this is really the way that we have financially built this whole organization, that these donations go into the Seed Fund, and then they get put out to a new project as a no-interest loan, which can be used to establish a new project somewhere. And so that Macedonia Fellowship funds that you give are put into the Seed Fund. The Seed Fund is loaned out at no interest for a new project. And then once a project is on its feet and becomes financially strong enough, they repay those funds back into the Seed Fund to be used over and over and over again. So it's a concept that we use where our giving goes out in the form of no interest loans to help those new projects, and then it comes back again and it continues to grow and to build. So I want to encourage you to encourage your churches or your friends or people that have the opportunity to give to an organization. That it might mean that if you gave a $500,000 donation to this organization, it might be used 10 times. And the value of that could easily become $5 million. Or if it's $5, that it could be used 10 times and it become $50. As far as the power of the ministry that God is doing through this organization around the world. So I just want to encourage you to be aware of those programs and to consider them as you move forward. Thank you. I want to talk to you about some issues that tend to divide. And this is a little bit sensitive. Historically, we started out as a school planting / church planting organization, and we realized pretty quickly that school planting is really what we needed to do, and that's where we needed to make our focus. So while we're very much local church oriented, at the same time, we realize that schools are really what we do. And so this is what we want to do well. And so we started out with a doctrinal statement that if we planted churches, it was more detailed than it might need to be in starting up schools. We ended up making a couple of small changes to the doctrinal statement, but I think we could say we are very evangelical, conservative culturally organization, that we really hold the Bible strongly as our final authority on everything. But I know even within a biblical context, sometimes there are issues that divide us, where theologically we may just take a different bent than other people do. At one point we were we had such a negative experience with some folks in our organization that were charismatics that we went to the far right and said, basically, we're not going to have anything to do with charismatics. And then we end up swinging the other way and saying we're not going to have people that are fatalistic type of hyper-Calvinist. And then, as an organization, like many churches and organizations, we found ourselves kind of swinging back and forth. I believe we're at a good spot right now. But I want us to talk about some of the issues that kind of tend to divide us. And unity is what we're looking for. We're looking for unity in the midst of diversity. And this is very exciting, but it's also very challenging to attain. It's very difficult to define, and it's very challenging to attain, and it's very, very difficult to maintain once you have that. But just three of the issues that tend to divide the body of Christ. We are asking you to consider these issues very frankly, and to come to a place in your life where these do not become the major issues that your life is about. One of them is the charismatic movement. We are at a place where we would welcome folks of that persuasion, even though the mission itself is not necessarily of that persuasion. But we would welcome folks to serve with us who are of that background and persuasion. If like in the other areas, you can say, you know what, in a school setting, this is not something that I need to make priority. If you make these issues of division, then it's going to be a problem. I will say to you that with all three of these persuasions, that if you don't make it an issue, it will not be a problem. And so I want to just ask you to show maturity, to show respect for others, and to serve well without making these your front door, front porch issues. Before you can enter the house, you have to jump through these hoops. And the other issue is the issue of legalism. And I happen to be from a background, from a very strict legalistic kind of approach that my church took. They were very, very clear on salvation, and I'm very thankful for that. But in my life, a long list of do's and don'ts were kind of handed out, not literally, but figuratively, that basically said good Christians do these things and bad Christians do these things. And if you do these things, you're great. And if you don't do these things, you're not so great as a Christian. And it was basically a list of things that the Bible is not really clear about or doesn't deal with at all, but they become like the major issues. And so we're saying if you're from a background, and I'll get practical here, where maybe the King James Version is the one and only version that should be used from your perspective, I would encourage you to use your King James Version, but don't impose that on everyone else. And if the school requests that the NIV be the version that's used at school, then comply with that and don't make that a major issue. There are some folks that get all hung up on music styles, you know, and they make it much bigger than a choice of styles. We're just saying, if you come from a legalistic background like me, really have a heart search about what's really biblical and what's really not biblical. And if you choose to embrace some of those positions personally, we will respect you for that. At the same time, we will be very glad that you do not make that the rules for your classroom or try to impose that on all of your fellow workers. The third group that I want to refer to is the hyper-Calvinist, who basically feel there's no need to share the gospel because whoever has been chosen will come to God no matter what, and therefore there's nothing you can do about it. It's a very fatalistic approach to the scriptures. And we believe very strongly that the scriptures teach us to go and to share the good news of Jesus Christ with the whole world and make disciples of all nations. I don't understand how those two railroad tracks really do come together. I'm not sure that we can understand that. But I'm just saying, when you have issues like that, I just want to encourage you, don't make those the main issues. Make the gospel the main issues. Make the Bible the authority. And that will give you good guidance in order to know how to work together on a team of folks that may not be just exactly from the same kind of background that you're from. So if the kids are rocking out on stage for Jesus, just bite your lip and go back and in your quiet time listen to the music that you enjoy. And so let's work together as a team and not let major things become minor and not let minor things become major either. And that will be very conducive for team building. Speaking of our corporate culture, there's one other issue that I want to share with you that I hope you'll really consider. I realize that we're living in a day where the local church is kind of out of sorts in many ways with our current culture. And what I want to say, organizationally, we are very strongly supportive of the local church. That doesn't mean that we think the local church is doing a great job. Maybe individual churches are. What we are saying, though, is that biblically we believe that the local church is God's way to reach the world for Christ. For some reason, he didn't say do it through schools. He didn't even tell us how to do it, but he did tell us that as a local church, that he wants us to mobilize as local assemblies to be involved in the work of the gospel around the world. So we feel very strongly that every member of NICS needs to be an active member of a local church. That might mean for some of you, like it did for me, my whole life centered around my church when I was growing up. There are some folks that they're very much involved in their local church, but they wouldn't really say that their whole life really centers around their church. What we ask of you is that you become a member of a local church, and that local church becomes a part of your life for your own personal accountability and for the teaching of the Word of God and for living in community. You'll find real quickly that your school community can often be a glass bubble where it's very hard to separate your work life from your personal life. And you may find that you find a new community at your local church that gives you options to actually have relationships with people outside your work environment, even though it may very well include some folks that are also a part of your work environment. So We're not telling you which church to join. We're telling you to join a sound, evangelical, Bible-preaching church and become a part of it. We're also telling you that if it's a church of a different language than the language that you speak, then you need to be very committed to learning that language so you can really be a part of that church as well. I want to encourage each one of you, while you're serving with Nick's, no matter if your heart belief is that I want to worship God on the mountainside every Sunday morning, I want to get up and see God's creation and worship God alone. While you're serving with the organization, find a local church that you can serve and that you can be a part of, and that will be a blessing to your life, and that you can also be a blessing to them, because we believe that God's church is central to God's plan for reaching the world with the gospel. Thank you for listening and for this time that we've had together. I couldn't be any more excited than I am today about the future of this ministry. Even during the times of this virus, I know we're going to recover. We may have some more difficult times to go through, but at the same time, I believe that God has his hand on this ministry. I welcome you into this family, and I thank you for joining the Nick's Oasis family. I believe that God is using us in a mighty way right now to impact the globe with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I believe new doors are opening up to us all the time. And I'm just glad you're going to be a part of it. And I ask you to take that mirror out, put it in front of you and say, I am Nick's. And I just welcome you and thank you for being a part of this team.